Ask your problema.
Look at that.
Wow.
Delmo.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode number 6 of Over the Cap. I am your host, Mike Val. Still not sponsored by anybody. I'm working on that sponsorship thing. But tonight's going to be a little different. This is the first show of the new year, so Happy New Year to everybody. I know we've been away for a couple weeks, holidays and whatnot, and just thought it was a better way just to take the 2 weeks off and get back at it tonight. Tonight's going to be a little bit different. I know in the past, even on the old show, the Bone and Zano Zone, I always was the one to always kind of break chops and break balls and stir the pot and whatnot. Tonight's not going to be like that. This idea came into my head earlier in the week. And on December 29th, the bowling world lost a legend. Dave Davis passed away on the 29th. And thinking about this and reading and seeing all the people, with the pouring out of, support and stories for Dave, I came across the idea this week of, the first show of the new year should be a tribute to Dave. And I couldn't think of anybody else that I'd rather have sit with me tonight to honor Dave Davis and tell stories than a fellow, or I'm not a fellow, but another PBA Hall of Famer, the lane man of all lane men, my personal buddy. He is the Phantom. You can see him on Phantom Radio on kegel.net. His show is there all the time. He's been doing it for years. The man who can make or break you by the push of a button or a spray can, in his case, because he never used the button on the lane machine. Lenny Nicholson, my man. There he is. My man. One of my favorite people in the world is Lenny Nicholson. What's up, bud? Mike? Lenny, I swear to God, I couldn't think of anybody better that I would want to have an hour with to talk about Mr. Davis. I never met Dave. Oh, I think we lost Len. Oh, boy, here we go. We lost Lenny. Not lost him in that respect. I don't know what happened to him. Len, I don't know where you are. He blacked out. All right, well, what we're going to do? We'll bring Lenny off the screen, and then when he pops back up, we will bring Lenny back up on the camera. I don't know where he is. But so like I said, this idea came into my head a couple weeks ago after Mr. Davis died. I had never had the privilege of meeting Dave Davis. He was oh, there he is. Lenny's back.
Yeah, my phone rang and it screwed it all up. I'm sorry.
When you're a busy man like you can take phone calls all day long. I understand, Len.
Man, oh man. Let me say this before we get going any further.
Yeah.
I just really appreciate you having me on. You could have picked anybody. 1,000 people would love to come on. And first thing I want to do, partner, is wish you a happy new year. And
same to you, pal.
I want to congratulate you on your new show. And I want to thank you for having me on.
Anytime, buddy. Anytime. So
anyway,
like I said, I normally break balls and break chops and make jokes. I don't want to do that. This is more of a tribute to Dave. I never met Dave ever. I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of big people in the bowling world. The three that I've always wanted to meet that I'm never going to have the chance to would be Dave Davis, Dick Weber, and Earl. I never met those three. I know you've had the privilege of spending many of years with the three of those guys.
For sure. I mean, what a thrill it was for me for all those years. We can go a lot of different directions. I don't really have a script or anything, but
I don't either.
some things I did want to say. Let me finish the introduction part off. I appreciate you picking me, and if I may, I'd also like to say God bless you to another great bowling person, and that's Randy Stoughton.
Yes, another
Randy
one.
passed away just a couple of days ago, and he was a stalwart as far as bowling went. He did it all. He drilled balls. He bowled. He gave lessons. He took over the women's thing at Weber University, and they won a couple of national championships as a new school. But we're all going to miss Randy, and that guy was so talented. If I could, you want stories?
The floor is yours.
I want to tell a story about Randy.
Okay.
In respect, because this guy, as I said, could do it all. But I would go down to Kegel like once a month to catch up on all the, the technology and all that kind of stuff. And every once in a while, I'd get there, and those guys were out there playing golf. And it was Del Warren and Ruben Garagosian and also, Randy and sometimes Richard Shockley. But Shockley had to give a lesson, so they asked me to play. Well, I'd been playing golf, on the tour for years. I was decent, I wasn't great, but I was decent. So I said, yeah, I'll fill in. So I went out there and I said, you guys gamble? Oh, yeah, we gamble. All right, well, I want to get into this action. So Randy says, me and you can play. I says, all right. And how much? He says, whatever you want. I says, well, I play for $20 for the front nine, $20 in the back nine, and 20 for total. He goes, okay. So I hit it. I was the first guy. I flipped the coin, hit it right down the middle, about 220. It's a 400-yard hole, and I'm strutting around like a professional wrestler, It's Randy hooks one over to the left, and it goes into the sand trap. So now I'm about 6'5". I'm standing there all proud. And so he was closer to the hole, so I had to go first. So I hit one up there, and it bounced about 20 feet in front of the green and rolled on up about 15 feet from the pin. And Randy goes, I didn't know you were that good. I says, well, I'm just getting warmed up. So he went in the sand trap. He wiggled his feet a little bit, and he knocked it in the hole for a 2. I'd never won a hole, 18 holes. I owe him $60. He says, give me $10 and we'll go have a drink. He says, I knew I could beat you from the start. He hustled me only because I hustled myself. But Randy was one hell of a golfer, man. I had to tell that story about him.
And a good bowler, too. He bowled on tour for a while.
Yes, he did.
And he was a rep, too. He repped he was an Ebonite rep for a while on the ladies' tour. He did everything.
He was. He did it all. He was just fantastic at everything. Everybody loved him. And we got to dedicate the show to Dave, though, or I'm going to get all emotional here. But
I'm sure
go ahead,
you are. So, I got some notes. I mean, looking at it, he joined the PBA in 1964. I didn't know this. He was the first lefty to ever win a major. Did you know that one?
Mm-hmm. Right.
18 titles, 4 majors. He was number 19 on the list. So I guess, when did you first meet Dave?
I met Dave in the mid-'60s when I was just hanging around with Billy Hardwick. I grew up with Hardwick, and every time there was a tournament nearby in the Bay Area, I'd go down there, and Billy would introduce me to all these guys. And I played all kinds of sports in high school. Billy had a nickname for me, Stick, because I had a lot of home runs in high school. And he introduced me to Dave as Stick. And you know what? He called me that every day, every time I talked to him for 60 years. In fact, I talked to him the day before he passed away, and he called me Stick again. And Billy was the only other guy that said that to me. And they're both gone now. They're both in heaven, and they're looking down, and they're both proud that me and you were talking, Parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I never met Dave, and I've always heard, and from where I am, being in New Jersey, so there's 2 pretty prominent lefties here, Johnny and Parker. And both of them, I mean, Johnny, I don't know if he roomed with him on tour, but I mean, Johnny traveled with him. They bowled together in the same era. And then Parker, Dave basically took Parker under his wing and coached him, taught him how to bowl when he was younger. So I mean, talking to John was very broken up by Dave's passing. It's a shame to watch it. It was a shame to see. I mean, he was very distraught by it.
I believe
But
it.
what are some good memories of Dave? I mean, I know he won the Firestone twice. He won the Nationals. Like, what's your favorite Dave, I guess, memory on tour?
Oh boy, watching him bowl was like poetry in motion. I left the tour in '77. I went to run a bowling center, and everybody thought I knew everything. So I became a coach naturally because, talk to help me with my game, blah, blah, blah. The very first thing I did, actually, this was in 1980 when I ran to the other bowling center. I got 2 tapes, videotapes, one of Dave Davis, in case a lefty wanted to learn how to bowl, and one of Brian Voss, in case a righty wanted to bowl. And I just break them out and put them on tape and say, here's what I want you to bowl like. Keep watching that. Try to learn that way. And those are my 2 idols as far as form went. I know David Ozio had a beautiful game, and Parker later on, he came along and he was beautiful too. But Dave was just a picture of grace and just one heck of a talent. You mentioned he won the very first major for a lefty.
Mhm.
And what I'd like to do, if I could, was to set the stage a little bit, because over the years, you and I both know there's been a lefty-righty controversy and all that kind of stuff. And I'd like to get the record straight a little bit, because there's a lot of rumors go around, and times, like I say about a lot of things, the weather changes, arm swings change, the weather changes. I mean, there's a lot of changes, and sometimes stories are totally different than they really were. But I've learned a lot over the last 80 plus years. And if you think back and look at history, back to 1927, and you're a baseball fan, what happened in 1927?
Well, that was the Murderers Row with the Yankees, right? In 27?
Exactly. And that was the year that Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs. Okay. Well, 60 homers was a record back then. And you know what? He was left-handed. Well, what was unique about that? Well, prior to that, lefties were basically different. And there weren't a whole lot of great athletes that were left-handed, mainly because being left-handed back in those days was frowned upon. In fact, if a kid picked up his fork with his left hand, he got slapped because he was considered different. Well, athletes were left-handed were a little bit different. If you think back, there's been some weirdly weird guys back there. But then if you looked around, there was no great left-handed golfers. There were no great left-handed bowlers. Nothing went on until the Babe. After Babe, that increased. Then in 1959, the PBA started. And by then, left-handed athletes became competitive. Well, Bill Allen came out as a lefty, and he became a top player on the tour in 1961. Then what happened? More lefties started to come out because, hey, there was a way to make some money, and left-handed, it wasn't a bad thing to be lefty. Well, in 1963, the proprietors were doing a land office business. They had full houses, waiting checks, the whole 9 yards. Well, there was a rule that you had to resurface your lanes every year. And they didn't want to close down for 2 weeks to lose all that business. So they lobbied the UABC back then. We don't want to close down. We've got a lane man. Our lanes are nice, blah, blah, blah. And if we close down, it's going to kill our business for 2 weeks. We can't afford that. So they gave way. The ABC gave way, and they changed the resurfacing rule. Now, proprietors didn't have to resurface their lanes every year. Well, some houses now went 4, 5, 6 years without resurfacing. And so what happened there? Well, since about 90% of the bowlers were right-handed, their lane surfaces, especially on the right, suffered. And then lefties started to dominate. And as lefties started to dominate in the late 60s, more and more came out. And Dave was one of the top bowlers back in that time. So, going back, I met him in the 60s, and, and I met him through Hardwick, obviously. Well, in 1969, Billy moved to Kentucky to be more centrally located. And I went through a divorce that year, and we were still very close friends. He said, "Come on back here. I'll get you a job in the bowling alley." So I did, and his sponsor was a partner with Pee Wee Reese, and there was a bowling center in Kentucky, and I went to work there. Well, Billy was the bowler of the year in '69, and he won the Miller High Life Open and all that. And he got beer for a year. Okay, every month the truck would pull up and fill up his garage with beer. Well, as the bowlers crisscrossed the country, every other weekend or so, or whatever it was, they'd stop at Billy's and have a big barbecue, and then that night they'd play cards and they played hearts. And I'll never forget this. I'm sitting there and here's all the top players, Don Johnson, Jack Lillo, Jim Godman, Gerhardt, Glover. Dave was there, and Sutar, and Burton, and Sam Baca was there, who also bowled on the tour. Well, they started playing hearts, and now after all of them are full of beer, they're all getting hot and heavy, and the game was hearts. You gave the guy the queen of spades, it cost you some money, right? So what happened, they started insulting each other, and then it got serious. And then they started saying, if you weren't left-handed, you'd never cash. The lefties would say, if they didn't block them, you'd never beat me, And this went back and forth, and I'm watching, and these guys are getting hot. And I had to break up a couple of fights because of lefty-righty controversy. It spilled over into the card games and all that kind of stuff. And so I went to Sam. I said, "Sam, what's going on?" He says, "Oh, it's the lefties and the righties." Well, I didn't know anything about the pro tour. I was into baseball, football, basketball, and all that. And I just thought if you were good, you were good. But I found out later that, the environment, if it was bad on one side, it was good on the other. And that caused a lot of problems. So that's just one of the things that we've got set this history back, let you know what's going on there.
But that's always going to be the case, and it still is the case, the lefty righty thing, and that's not what we're going with. But you've been out of lanes for years, but even now, it's still the biggest argument and debate in bowling is the lefty righty debate, and you know that.
Well, it's kind of funny. I thought it was me for all those years, and then when I'm gone, I still hear it. In fact, some of the guys call me up and want to know what happened. I have no idea.
When did you stop doing the lanes on the tour?
1995.
So 95, and you started when?
71, but I left. Mike, this is crazy. I quit that job 5 times, and they brought me back 4 times. So the last time I quit, I went to work for Kegel, and that was in 95.
So 20, let's say roughly 25 years.
Off and on, yeah.
All right. So how many, this is totally off the topic, how many fantastic lefties won titles and had Hall of Fame careers in 25 years of you doing the lanes?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
right?
Davis, Petraglia, Parker Bone,
Albee,
Mike McGrath. I mean, I could name a bunch of them.
And for them to say the left was always blocked out or you blocked the left, it's an insane statement to ever make.
Yeah, it really is. It gets exaggerated over time because, every once in a while, when you're trying to be fair, we're talking about putting a millionth of an inch of oil on a lane, and then the ball's eating it up like it's going out of style. You don't have any control once they get started. So a millionth of an inch is about the thickness of a head of a pin. And these bowling balls, it was pretty much easy when they had just hard rubber balls. But when plastic balls came out in the early 70s, it started eating up the oil. And then in the 80s, urethane came out, and that really sucked up the oil and it carried it down. And so what they did then was, all right, we'll change the surface because friction is the problem. We'll get rid of the wood and put synthetics in. Well, that just magnified the friction factor. And then they went out and increased the friction by going to resin balls. And now the resin balls
Mhm.
They
They're
bite into that
sponges.
lane like tire chains and snow. You know,
It's a
crazy.
sponge. So here's
Yeah.
one. Did you do the lanes in the '97 high roller? Was that you?
I think it was. I did the about 4 different years. I did the high roller.
Figured. So let's get back to Dave.
Why would you say that?
Well, because that's the year my friend John here, he won a sweeper at the high roller, so he's probably going to give you the credit for it. You should ask him for 10% of his winnings. He won one of the sweepers there, but that's for another day. So
let me say this
yeah.
about that. You know, I don't want to take any credit because I don't want to take any blame if it goes the other way.
So Dave's game was always very simple, right?
Very simple.
Very simple. Generationally, like he was different than Parker and different than like a Steve Cook and a different than even like an Albee or whatnot. So where does he fit in on the Mount Rushmore of the lefties? I mean, there's Earl, there's Parker, you know, Albee, Couch. Like generation, like where does Dave fit in among the greats on the left side of the lane? You think?
That's a tough question, but I'll answer it because I've been asked that before. He's in the top 4 of all
Okay.
time as far as I'm concerned.
With
In fact,
with the 3 I mentioned,
with the 3 you mentioned, that would be Albee,
Earl and Parker.
Yes, sir. And let me say, there's a tie for 5th on that group. That's about 6 deep, and
Wow.
it goes way back to. I mean, like you mentioned, Steve Cook. Oh my God, that guy threw a truck and a half. And when you see a Jason Couch, who one time in Toledo, he says, "Yeah, you'll never shut me out." And I said, "Why would I want to shut you out? You're a friend of mine." He says, "Well, I got to play inside." I says, "Well, you're good at inside." He says, "Yeah, well, come here." And he was laying the ball down on the 2 board on the right, going across the 5th arrow on the left, you know. So
Yeah.
he says, "How can you shut me out? Who wants to shut you out? You know, you're awesome, unbelievable." So, but yeah, the tie for 5th place part it's a coin toss.
So Dave is on the top 4 of that list, and his game was more accuracy and precision than anything. There really wasn't power back in the '60s and the '70s, right?
Exactly. But, you know, Dave, you can look and research and see that for a while there, his ball was hitting so hard because he had such great leverage with a great knee bend. He went to a 14-pound ball.
Really?
You can check that out. Ask Parker, ask Johnny, ask anybody that bowled back in the day. He went to a 14-pounder because he was knocking the 3-pin over the top of the 7. I mean, it's just unbelievable. He was awesome. I mean, yeah.
And you look at him, like his swing was just a pendulum. I mean, it was locked. His elbow was locked. He never bent his elbow. It was amazing to watch him. Like I've watched a couple of videos like leading into tonight.
Yeah.
It was like it flowed. Like I look at Parker. Parker's the smoothest bowler I've ever seen. And Dave makes Parker look like he's having a seizure going to the foul line.
Yeah.
No offense,
Well,
not knocking Parker, but that's how smooth this man was.
yeah. Well, it's kind of similar. Do you play golf?
Do I look like I play golf?
No, but I don't either. But me and you look like we could hit it 300 yards, right?
Well, what we look like and what we do are 2 different things.
We can't hit it 200 yards. But you take a guy like Freddie Couples, who swings so nice, he hits it 300 yards with a smooth, even swing. It's all leverage. It's all timing. You know, it's there's a word for it. I'm losing it right now, but it's not power. It's how
Finesse.
you approach your body, finesse. Yeah, all those big words. And that's the way Dave was. I mean, Joe Berardi, you looked like he was throwing at 25 miles an hour. You know, Parker could throw at 20 with a nice, smooth, even arm swing. Unreal. Yeah.
So, how about this one, Len? We talked about him like on the top 3 or top 4 of the lefties, right? So in that era of the '70s, right? So you had Johnson, Weber, Ritger. Who else was there? Say Johnny, Stefanich, all those guys. When bowling was bowling, right?
Yeah.
Where do we rank Dave in that era? I mean, there was and that's when bowling was bowling, right? So legend after legend, Barry Asher. Uh, you want to throw Tita in there, Earl, obviously. Where does he fit into that group?
All right. Well, it's a tough question because there were so many guys that came and went, but
Yeah.
it was like a 10-year cycle that there was when in the 50s, even before the PBA started. It seemed like guys lasted about 10 years. And then when the PBA started, it was a 10-year thing, some of these guys. It seemed like it went with lacquer and rubber balls, and then it went with plastic and urethane finishes, and 10 years of that. Like it's like Ron Palumbi, he was come and gone all of a sudden. And even guys like Del Ballard, I mean, as great as he was, as time went by, they lasted about 10 years. So there was that period of time in the mid 70s to like the mid 80s. There was about a 10-year period there that I call the golden years of bowling.
Okay.
And all those guys you just mentioned, Hardwick and Stefanich and Ritger and Sutar and Davis, and Earl was just coming on in the mid 70s, basically, and Roth and Holman. I mean, just 24 Hall of Famers, almost any week you wanted to look. And those 24 finalists each week, you got to put Davis in there, Earl, Albee, and Parker. So them four guys, as great as they were, could be in the top 24 anytime against anybody. And
what was the difference then between Earl and Dave then? I mean, they seem
well,
like they have similar games, similar ball rolls, it seemed like, right?
Yeah, similar accuracy. I would say Dave had a little more power. Earl had a little bit more accuracy.
Okay.
Earl was nuts. I mean, a quick Earl story. I know we're talking about Dave, but because you mentioned Earl, I lived in the Bay Area, and when I ran the bowling center in Tracy, California, we didn't have a computer, so we had to take all of our score sheets down to Dublin Bowl, where he owned. And Ted Hoffman, the manager there, would let us do our sheets there. So I'd go down there early in the morning after the leagues on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and do our computer sheets on their computer, the league sheets. And so many times Earl would be down there practicing. And I'd stand at the front counter. He was the only guy in the bowling alley throwing the ball. And I'd be watching him. And so one day, I knew him well. We'd played golf together and stuff like that. And I went down. I says, Earl, I've been watching you for 20 minutes. I haven't seen you get a double. He says, oh, I'm working on something. I said, what are you working on? Well, I'm anticipating what they're going to be like on the tour. So I'm trying something new. What are you trying? Well, this and that, and he's going into all these physics and all this other kind of stuff. And I says, come on, man, these lanes are just probably a little tough. And he goes, no, they're not that tough. He says, watch. So he got about 12 or 13 in a row. Then he left the 7-pin. And he says, you know what happened there? I says, well, no. He says, well, come here. And we walked down on the lane, and he said something to me that blew my mind, because I'd already left the tour in 77, and this was in the 1980. And we walked down, he says, what do you think my favorite shot is? And I says, well, when I used to watch you out here all the time, you look like you were playing like the 10 board. He said, what's my second favorite shot? I said, 5, probably. I said, what's your third? I said, 15. He goes, nope. He says, I'd like to play 11, 6, and 16. I says, what? He says, I never wanted to hit the arrows. The arrow's made out of a different board. That's fiberboard. When the ball hits that fiberboard, it doesn't react the same way it does on wood. He says the 6 board is smooth. The 11 board is smooth. The 16 board is smooth. No one ever has said that to me, and he's dead ass right. If you ever patch the lane and put the arrows in there, that filler board, it's a fiber board. It doesn't react the same. It feels different. You rub your fingernail across it, it's different. No one's ever said it. Not Burton, not Ozio, not Hardwick, nobody. So that's the knowledge that guy had.
And you ain't finding that anytime soon or anymore.
No, especially on synthetics. No, there's no difference.
Yeah. All right. So there's a difference between Earl and Dave.
Basically, yeah. I don't think. Well, Dave never said anything to me like that. In fact, I never even brought it up. I don't want to tell anybody the secret, so it's not my plan.
And he had and Dave actually bowled on the senior tour. I mean, he came to Jersey for a while. He opened up a center here, which I knew you knew about that. He opened up a center probably about a half an hour from where I grew up, and I was never in the building. And I don't think it was open for more than maybe 10, 12 years. I don't know when it closed. I don't know that. If somebody's watching from the area, they'll probably know it. But he did bowl on the senior tour for a while, and he had some success on the senior tour.
Yes, he did. And mentioning that bowling center in Jersey. In fact, I got a call today from a guy that he knows I'm going to be on tonight. He saw it in Facebook. His name is Mike Carroll. I don't know if you remember Mike or not, but he says Dave, he worked with him for 5 years and made him into a good bowler, and talked about how great of a guy he was. And even when Dave was there, he would give people autographs, stand around, talk to them, ask them all kind of questions. He was a personable guy. And, I noticed that same thing on the tour. I saw Dave walking up and down the concourse with 2 double ball bags and another double balls around his shoulders, and people stopping him saying, "Can I have your autograph?" Instead of just walking by, he would stop, talk to him, sign the thing, pick up his balls, go 5 more feet. Same thing would happen. There's a lot of guys that would have said, "Get lost. I got to go work now," but not
a gentleman, a true gentleman, it sounds like.
True gentleman. In fact, there's another story. I don't know if you want to hear it. But,
let it rip. Let it rip.
Okay. It's about
Dave.
It's about Dave. And in fact, this is from Chris Chartron, who is the CEO of Kegel right now. And he was working in the pro shop down at the Carter Bowl down in West Palm Beach when Dave ran that bowling center. And so Chris was a kid drilling balls, cleaning up the pro shop, 16 years old. He said he had a phony looking haircut, cut halfway on the sides and then real long in the back. And then he was embarrassed. So he wore a cowboy or a baseball cap. Sometimes it'd be frontwards, sometimes backwards. He had the jeans with the holes in them. He was 16. And so Dave says, "Hey, son, come here a minute." What's that, sir? And he says, "You're working in the pro shop, right?" And Chris goes, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, you should be more professional." He says, "You should have a nice hair comb. You should wear nice shirts, nice pants. If you're ever going to get anywhere in this world, you got to act like a pro." And he said he got a haircut the next day, stopped wearing his baseball cap, changed his whole attitude, and went from being just a guy that was working in a pro shop to having a purpose in life. And he worked his way up, and now he's the CEO of Kegel. And he says that's because of Dave Davis. Unbelievable. That's amazing. Story. Yeah, true story.
So another one, I'll give you, I don't know many stories about Dave, but I've got to know this guy pretty well in the past couple of years. And he actually got me for $19.95. I actually bought his book. This guy, Mr. Monticelli. Monticelli.
Mileto, yes, sir.
So anybody who's watching this, Dream, Believe, and Do It. It's Mileto's biography. It is fantastic. It's only like 150 pages. It is a fantastic read if you're into bowling and like Mileto. His story, I don't know what you know about him, Len, but Mileto's story is fantastic. But in here, I found a piece in here, and I called Mileto today. He's doing a clinic tonight, so he may pop in, he may not pop in, but I wanted to read this little piece here. So Mileto's idol was Mark Roth. At the Brunswick World Open, I met a professional bowler named Dave Davis. A friend with one of the Venezuelans I traveled to, Luis Guillermo. After the tournament in Chicago, we found out that Dave Davis owned a bowling center in New Jersey, and we arranged to go. We also found out by chance that Mark Roth practiced at that same bowling center, and of course I wanted to meet him. So blah, blah, blah. We fast forward a little bit. Dave brought me onto the lanes and introduced me to Mark Roth. I spoke no English at the time, but my sister Adriana spoke it quite well and helped me communicate with him. It was an indescribable emotion to see him in front of me and have the joy of bowling and practicing on the same lanes as Mark Roth. He gave me a couple of tips and told me that I was pretty talented. After that, his words of great encouragement continued to confirm that I could compete with him at some point. After that, Dave took me into his pro shop, drilled 3 bowling balls for me, and my career started there. So Dave Davis was almost influential in Amleto getting his start and living his dream and whatnot. And I know that when Dave did pass away a couple weeks ago, Amleto was all over social media with the tributes and the pictures and the stories. I know it hit home for him.
Amleto, what a talent he was. And, I'd get up at 3 or 4 in the morning to go do the lanes, no matter what town it was, Buffalo, New York, or Southern California, whatever. And invariably, as I walked through the lobby, I would run into Amleto. And the first couple of times I thought, this guy's a party guy. He's coming home 4 o'clock in the morning. What's going on? But as it happened night after night, I found out that he'd get up early and run. He'd run for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah.
And
No,
what
thank you.
shape that guy was in. Unreal.
And he still is. You know what's amazing about Dave too, Lenny? He won the senior masters back-to-back years, right?
Yes, yes.
He had to change his game so much to adapt from rubber to plastic to urethane to resin. And obviously he's playing the card of, Mother Time, obviously. He's 50, he's not 30 anymore. That arm swing isn't as high and as long as it used to be.
Yeah.
He really changed with the times. Like the game never really passed him by. You know what I mean?
No, there are very few guys. You look at the record books and the programs from the 50s to now, there's basically been 4 generations. Okay. And you just named them. Plastic, rubber balls, plastic balls, urethane balls, resin. It never changed for him. But a lot of guys, they one or the other, and they were gone. But he survived the generations basically because of his fundamentals were just so solid.
Yeah, and even in the later years, when he was 50s and 60s, when he won those masters, the senior masters, he looked identical. Just a little bit more erect at the line. Swing wasn't as high, but you could tell he was just picture perfect. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah. So the funny thing about Dave that I used to crack up was we used to go to this place in Rhode Island. It was called Custy's. I don't know if you ever heard of it. All you can eat. Okay. He weighed 140 pounds. I was 240. We went in there one time with a whole bunch of bowlers. We had 20 guys at the table, and they had one whole table full of lobster, one whole table full of steak, one whole table full of everything, no matter what it was. He got up 3 times and filled up his plate 3 times and then went back for dessert. And I'm looking at him, how do you do it? He goes, I'm still hungry, and I just had my dessert.
I hate people like that, and he weighs 140 pounds soaking wet.
Unbelievable, that guy.
So,
but, I want to say this too before I forget, because
go ahead.
Custy's, it was a famous place back there, all you can eat for like 1995 or whatever. But there were times, in fact, we went there 3 different times. 2 times that I remember vividly, he would stop with his plate in his hand talking to people and end up put this plate down, give him an autograph. He took time with everybody. It wasn't just now and then. It was with everybody. He was amazing.
So he is the true definition of what an ambassador would be.
And so much class. I mean, I never saw him with a dirty shirt. I never saw him with wrinkled up pants. I never saw him without nice shoes. They were either shined or tennis shoes. He was first class. His hair was always combed. That's one of the reasons why he got the job as an announcer, because he was clean and neat.
Yeah, he did it for a couple of years before Bo took over, right?
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, there's a long story about that, but that's for another time, probably.
Yeah, but he filled in. I read about that. He filled in for a little bit. I'm just trying to get into some more stuff here, but like
He
I'm
did.
looking at. Good.
I was just going to say he did a wonderful job on there, and he would have been there for a long, long time, except for Burton. Burton came along, and Burton was one of Eddie Elias's boys, right? So he got the top billing on that, even though they had a contest between Hardwick and Strampy and Earl and Weber. They had like a contest who could be the color commentary after Wayloo left, and Burton got it, but it was kind of fixed, to be honest with you. I can
So
say it now. Most
yeah,
everybody's dead. But
Jesus.
what happened was they had an audition, okay?
Okay.
And Burton was one of Eddie Elias's boys, and Eddie was the commissioner, owner of the PBA, founder. And what happened was he won hands down because Burton would fly his dad's airplane, and he knew how to talk and fly and handle a plane and all that all at the same time while the guy's in your ear. And when you're commentating, you got the director in the truck talking to you while you're talking, and Burton can handle that because he was used to it. Okay, so nobody hardly knew about that, but since I work for the PBA, I heard all his inside stuff. And,
Yeah, you get all the gossip, the inside stuff, right?
yeah, and Burton was good looking, all that kind of stuff. He was attractive. People like to see people that were good looking.
Yeah, they don't want to see us on TV. No,
me and you, we couldn't even do
No.
the lanes in front of anybody.
So then what would be your? So you watch Dave win all of his titles, basically. So what is your favorite Dave Davis memory on tour that you've seen, or the greatest title you watch Dave win? There has to be some kind of a story about a title he won, or only lefty to get through and make the show and run the ladder. There has to be something.
Well, the one that stands out to me, that actually 4 or 5 do, but the one that stands out to me was the PBA National Championship. I forget the year, but it was against Paul Caldwell, and they were up in Seattle. And they get into the 10th frame, and Caldwell needs a strike to win. Okay? And he throws it in the gutter. So for the title, right? And so the crowd's, now he needs a spare, which is a strike. So he just throws one in the gutter. How's he going to get a strike? Well, he throws a strike, and now they're tied. Now they got to go into a roll-off. Mm-hmm. And the crowd's going crazy, and Caldwell's up again. He's getting ready to bowl, and he's fidgety. And Dave stood up, put his hands up in the air to the crowd. Be quiet, please. Show this man some respect. He calmed the crowd down, and then Caldwell went ahead and beat him. So he was the first guy there to shake your hand when he got beat by somebody else. He had so much class. He had extra class.
So everybody says like Dick Weber was the best ambassador sports ever seen. It sounds like Dave was like Dick would be 1 and Dave would be 1A basically, right? That's kind of the way you're making it sound.
Well, you got to throw Salvino in there, the top 3.
Okay.
Because Salvino, I mean, he was unbelievable showman, and he had a lot of people watching him bowl and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, those 3 guys, they're head and shoulders against anybody else out there ever.
And what's sad is that the bowlers today don't even know who those guys are. I mean, when Dave passed away, younger people had no clue who this man was and what he did. They say, well, he only won 18 titles. He won 18 titles, but look at what he was competing against for a decade and a half.
Exactly right.
Yeah, like no disrespect to the guys today, but the talent isn't even close to what it was back in the 70s or in the 80s for that matter. The formats were different. Those guys bowled 42 games a week, 56 games a week. To win 18 titles against the legends of, like you said, like Johnny and Don Johnson and Ritger and all those guys, 18 titles is a pretty damn good career. It really is.
Well, I'll never forget one of the fellows you've mentioned, and we've got up there in the top 4 of all time, was Parker. In the practice session one day, I'm wandering around watching everybody bowl. I'm checking out the lanes and the shot, and Parker's over there, whatever pair it was, and he throws the ball at a 7-pin, and he makes it. Comes back. Now the full rack's there. He throws it at the 7-pin. And he does this like 5 or 6 times in a row. So now I'm thinking there's something wrong with the approach. He's sliding on one side because it's sticky in the middle or something. So I go down and say, Parker, are these approaches all right? He goes, yeah, why? I says, you're throwing the ball at 7 pins. He goes, I know, I missed one last week. You don't see that anywhere. You know, if a guy don't get a strike nowadays, he changes balls. He don't work on his game. It's crazy.
It's a different era. It's a whole different world now. And what's sad is, like, when I did the show with Justin, we interviewed Bo. We had Bo Burden on, and I knew Bo had all his titles on tour, but I didn't know he had Eagles from the ABC tournament. He won 9 Eagles, this man. And after we interviewed Bo, people would message me on Facebook and said, younger people, well, I only knew him as the guy that did the commentary. I only knew him as the guy that gave the tip of the week. I never knew he was a player. The people in this generation, like the kids coming up now, they have no idea what those guys did and how good they really were.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you got to realize that also back in those days, crossing pairs and all that, this was before, we didn't start the lane maintenance program till the summer of 71.
That was the year Johnny had the big year, right? 71? Was that Johnny's big year?
71 was when I think Johnny made like 9 shows out of 13, something like that. I think he won 3 in a row on the winter tour. He had a fantastic winter tour. And then we started doing the lanes in the summer tour. And Don Johnson came on, who was, pretty good player in the 60s too. Mm-hmm. And it ironically, it went down to the last tournament of the year. And Don, whoever won the title at the Brunswick World Open would be Bowler of the Year. And Johnson won, and Johnny came in second. So that was kind of historical. The other part of the thing that I wanted to mention about Dave before I forgot. Mm-hmm. This was Chris Chartrand told me the story about when Dave was running the Don Carter Bowl down in West Palm Beach. He says, he'd go down and help people with their game, old ladies, old men, whatever. And he was an idol down there because he was averaging like 235 back in the day when nobody was even averaging 220. But he had 11 in a row about 10 times. And every time he get 11 in a row, the whole place would stop. And Dave would miss the head pin. And then the next week he'd go Brooklyn. And finally he said, what are you doing? He says, I'm trying to get all 10 scores, 299, 298, 297. And he got them all except 292.
That's the ability of a real good player.
Well, if you could get 292, you're a miracle worker.
You are a miracle worker. Yeah. And you know what? They would still complain to you about doing the lanes. I got 2, right?
Yeah. Oh, I heard a lot of complaints. Trust me.
So I don't even know what else to say about him. I mean, you've said so much about him. The bowling world, it sounds like, not even the bowling world. The world lost a real good guy. That's the best way to say it. From what you've said tonight, the world lost a real good man. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, one of the best. I knew he was sick for a long time. He had that open heart and all that. I stayed in touch with him because I loved the guy, to tell you the truth. And what really killed me one time was when Dick Weber passed away. He was just, I don't want to drop names, but I had a good relationship with him. He was a character. He was a prankster. And all of a sudden at 5:30 in the morning, I get a phone call that he passed away. And I'll tell you what, I was crying like a baby. And my wife came in and said, what's the matter? And I told her, and she says, what's the matter? Why are you so broke up? I says, I wish I could have talked to him one more time, you know? And so ever since then, my friend, with all my buddies and stuff, at the end, I say, I love you, because you may never say that again. But he was only 75. Now, Dave was 80. It crushed me that he passed away, but you know what? I knew it was coming. and
Yeah.
it wasn't a shock. And the way I look at life is, I believe in faith, and I'm serious. He wasn't in good shape, and he's in a better place now. So God
Yeah.
bless him.
And that's the best way to look at it. He's not suffering anymore. He's up there. There's a hell of a 5-man team up there. There's a lot of
Oh,
guys that can pull with him up there.
oh, what a team! Carter, Weber, Earl, Hardwick.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but and I never knew all the other stuff like you said about him, his generosity and his personability. About signing the autographs and shaking hands and whatnot. Those are all things that you never hear about. But getting back to what I said before, it's almost like the baseball. Going back to baseball, just because you and I never saw Babe Ruth play, it's almost like what he didn't exist, right?
Yeah,
And
it
that's
seems
what it's
like. Yes,
yeah, and
go
it
ahead.
seems like that in bowling too. Like because the generation now didn't see Dave throw a ball, or never saw Don Johnson throw a ball, or Roth throw a ball. What they did never happened. They never existed to these people, and it's the truth. And now it's we look at the transformation of what bowling is now, where it's all the two handers and the power players, and that's great. But you need to look back at the history, and you have to realize and maybe do a little bit of homework of what these guys, like the founding fathers, you want to call it.
Yep.
If it wasn't for them, there would be no PBA. There would be no Belmonte. There would be no, Troop. There would be none of those guys now if it wasn't for the Davises and the Johnsons and the Petraglias and Parkers and Roth. It wouldn't. They would not be there now if it wasn't for those guys. And I think people that bowl that are younger need to really do a little bit of research and read about these guys and watch them on YouTube and appreciate their craft because they were so talented.
Boy, I can't agree with you anymore. And like the influence that Dave had on a lot of people, we'll never know it. All the people's hands that he shook in the pro-am and,
Mhm.
and walked away, because you bowled on 3 different pairs, and he did that for years and years. And all the people he met, and I'll tell you, Facebook, when the word got out, there was just as many likes and those kind of comments as there was when Dick Weber passed away. So
Mhm.
Dave was well loved, and I got one more story. I
Let
got
it
to
rip.
tell you.
Let it flow.
We talked a little bit about the senior tour. Well, the senior tour, it was for a lot of guys that never really had a chance to bowl on a regular tour. Now they're retired. They go out there as old timers, and now the camaraderie was there again, and they were still very competitive. And there was 2 squads basically. One with the old timers that like to play bridge, and the other ones were the guys that like to play golf. So A squad, they had all the golfers. B squad had all the bridge players. So one day it was Stuss and Semez and Weber and Sutar, and Dave. They intermingle every once in a while. There's 8 of them that were pretty close, and they had 2 foursomes. They'd always go out first, and there was a lot of gambling. And Sutar actually kept everybody's handicap to keep it right. So this one day, uh, he says, "Come on, Phantom, you get out here and play too." So I was in the second group, and Dave was in the first group ahead of me. And he was playing with his old friend, this guy, Mel Wolf. He was an old time guy that worked on your eyes, ophthalmologist or something. He wasn't much of a bowler, but he loved to play golf, and he loved all the camaraderie. And so they're playing together, and I'm in the back, the second group. So they go out and they're hitting, and it's early in the morning. And I don't know if you ever played golf in the morning, but with the dew and everything,
Mhm.
you can see your footprints. You can see
Yeah.
the cart path, the truck tires that went through the grass, right? So we're on the tee, and these guys they hit off, and they're going for their ball. And Mel hits one way down the right side behind the trees. So, okay, nobody, who cares? He's on another group. So now it's our turn. We get up there. I hit it way down to the right. And so I grab my Cubs, and the other guys take the cart. They're going to the other side of the fairway. So I'm walking down the fairway, and I'm seeing Mel Wolf's footprints all the way down, for about 150 yards. And then they go off to the right because the footprints was in the dew in the grass. I could see it. And so I get up close to where I thought Mel was, and I see a bunch of commotion in the grass, and all the dew is all messed up. And then I see like footprints, and I see where he's kicked the ball out to the fairway. Okay, he had the toe wedge going. So
Well, we've all done that.
yeah, we've all done it, but you're gambling with your buddies, right? So
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm watching this. I'm in the back group. I don't say nothing, but we get done. We were in the lounge, and they're all exchanging their money and whatnot. And so Dave comes over. He goes, "Hey, Jeff, good time." I says, "Yeah, man, but I got to tell you something, Pards." He goes, "What's that?" I says, "Did you have a bet with Mel?" He goes, "Yeah, I always have a bet with Mel. Why?" I says, "The guy's cheating, man. He's kicking the ball out of the fairway." He says, "That's okay." He says, "I know he cheats." He says, "But if I told him about it, he wouldn't play me anymore." He knew he was cheating him, and he still beat him. I love
If you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? That's the motto.
And that went on for a couple of years. I don't know if Dave ever confronted him with it, but oh my God, that was a riot. I love it.
Listen, I can't thank you enough for coming to talk to me. I wish I had a chance to meet the man. I really do. I wish I had a chance to meet him. He sounds like he was a wonderful human being, to say the least.
He
Here,
was, Mike, and I love guys like you that are trying to carry on their tradition and bring up guys like this. It's unfortunate that he's not here.
yeah,
But that's why I say, just tell your good friends you love them every time you talk to them at the end.
absolutely. So I want to hit you with two more before we go.
All right, hurry up
All
because
right,
my
so
clock's running out here.
I know your clock's running out. So Johnny Petraglia Jr. He's been sitting with me the past couple weeks, and he's been doing, coming on and co-hosting, right?
Okay.
So we did a couple things. We did our top 10 list of this and that and this and that, right?
Okay.
What's the best telecast you ever saw, Lenny?
Oh boy. Yeah. Well,
And
because
I'll give you mine, and then I want to hear yours.
okay.
So I said to Johnny was the 1970 Firestone. And Johnny's was obviously the 94 national championship with his dad. And I never knew this about that show, that John Sr. was the only guy to bowl 200 on that show.
Yeah.
Nobody else broke 200 except for Johnny multiple
Right.
times. So that was Junior's favorite show. I said mine was the 70 Firestone. What's the best telecast you've ever seen, Lenny?
Well, let me make a comment on those two. I wasn't
Okay.
there for the Firestone when Don Johnson was on his face, but
Okay.
I saw it on television. Okay.
Mhm.
I thought that was really exciting. And now the next one with Johnny at Toledo, I did the lanes and I was standing right there. And
Okay.
I had so much emotion going. As a matter of fact, right now I'm still shaking because that was $100,000. I mean,
Mhm.
that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it was the PBA National Championship. And what I was really proud of was they were tough. And that's what I wanted them to be, tough. And he made them look easy. So my hat's off to him. It always has been. And that's all I can say about that. But it was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Litchi basically tackled him. Litchi tackled him.
Yeah. I remember him jumping out. Yeah, that was cool. But, I got to say that the all-time record breaker was, and this is a little self-serving. It was when I got inducted into the PBA Hall of Fame. That was on February of 2011. Okay. And I watched the show in person, sitting in the front row, and I couldn't believe my eyes because it was a record-breaking performance.
I know which one you're talking about.
What it was, it was a lane man's delight because one guy said they were too easy. The other guy said they were impossible. So one guy shot 100. The other guy shot 299.
And well, okay. Well, all right. Last one.
Okay.
We did this one a while back. Who's the one guy that belongs in the Hall of Fame that's not in the Hall of Fame?
Whoa, man.
I got my one guy.
Okay. I've lost track a little bit over the last
Okay.
couple of years. I don't have an updated list
Mhm.
of who is in, who isn't in. Wow.
I'll give you one name:
All right, give me a name.
Steve Jaros.
Oh, Steve Jaros, what a bowler! That guy's awesome.
And this is my gripe. The guy only won 8 times on the national tour. That's fine. He has a major, 300 on TV, millionaire, blah blah blah. He's done it all. He has 40 plus regional wins.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and we did a whole thing about this, and Walter Ray was with us, and it was a really good time. Steve was on with us. It's unfair, I think, that a guy like Jaros, a Hugh Miller's another one, that have 40, 50 regional wins, that have 5, 7, 8 titles on the national tour. They don't look at their regional accomplishments. They beat, look at Jaros. Jaros beat Weber, Lenny Borsch, the Trabers for 30 years in that central region or Midwest region, wherever they are.
Yeah, exactly.
And he did it on tour too. I will go to bat with anybody that Steve Jaros belongs in the PBA Hall of Fame. 1,000% belongs there.
I agree 100%. Last time I looked at anything like that, it was just hands down. This guy belongs in there. Just a total superstar and a great guy too.
He's a hell of a player, very underrated. And the harder they were, the better he bowled too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So when you had your spray gun, he would figure out a way how to beat you, basically.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He came down to Kegel many times and bowled in different things down there, and he would dominate no matter what was going on. Outside shot, inside shot, tough, easy. I mean, this guy could bowl.
He said there was Kegel used to run a tournament. It was like a super regional, basically. I forgot what the name of it was. Something like with the World, something like that. But it was a big regional tournament, and Kegel, I think he said Kegel sponsored it, and he won it a couple times. I don't remember what the hell he called it, but it was something along those lines.
Yeah, they had different tournaments down there all the time. In fact, a bunch of good players from Florida came out of there. One was Jason, one was John Janowitz. I don't know if you've heard of him.
John Janowitz is the best amateur bowler in the world. I'm sorry. And he's the best lane man in the world too.
I agree 100%. No doubt in my mind.
In fact, there's a good group of guys out of there.
People call me up. They go, "Can you help me with this pattern?" Yeah, I'm going to help you the best I can. Here's John Janowitz.
Here's John's number.
Call him up.
And John, so I run a tournament. I run a Masters tournament in our area here. It's coming up in a couple of weeks, and I've told you this before. John designs the pattern for me every year. So last year I said, John, this is what I have. What's the surface? What's the machine? All that. So I gave him all the guts of the center, right?
Yeah.
Because what do you want your cut score to be? So I said, well, I gave him the format. I said, look, I want it to be plus 25 for 5 games. They're all crossing the house, whatnot. I had 114 guys go to the starting gate last year, and I wanted plus 25 for the finals. My number for the finals is plus 27. And I called John up that Monday, and I said, how the hell do you do it? He goes, it's not hard. He goes, it's a combination of this and this, and he's rambling on about all this. I said, John, you're talking Chinese to me right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's the modern day Len Nicholson. That's what he is.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a little guessing, but it takes a little knowledge where you got to understand what the dimensions are.
Oh, we lost him again. He probably got a phone call, but you know what? We're gonna wrap it up anyway. Lenny probably got a phone call. He'll be bound. He'll bounce back in a second. Oh, there he is. Got a phone call again?
Yeah. The phone, I don't know how to turn it off and then turn you off at the same time.
That's all right. I'm gonna let you go, but we've been over for an hour. Buddy, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, when I got this idea, I couldn't have thought of anybody else to tell stories for an hour and talk about Dave Davis. I couldn't have thought of anybody better than you.
Well, I appreciate it.
It's an honor. Are you going to Bowl Expo this year? Are you going to go to Bowl Expo this year?
I will be there. Orlando.
Done. I will be there. My parents are in the Villages. I will be at Bowl Expo this year. And
let's have a beer.
I know a particular woman that wants to meet you too.
Jackie.
I'm not going to say that name, but yes.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart. Yeah, I can't wait to meet her.
Lenny, I can't thank you enough, bud. Stay
Okay,
well.
Parch.
Phantom Radio, find the guy, kegel.net. He's Lenny Nicholson is the true definition of a Hall of Famer, everybody. And he can
Thank
make
you.
or break you by the push of one button, too, guys. Don't forget that.
All right, Parch. I love you. Thanks
Love you
for
too,
having me
Lenny.
on.
I'll talk to you soon, pal. Be well. And there he
Okay.
goes, Lenny Nicholson. There's no better guy than Lenny.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Lenny. I tell you what, I didn't realize how much Dave Davis did behind the scenes and how much of an ambassador this man was. But he is truly the definition of a Hall of Famer. He is going to be missed. So our thoughts and prayers are with the Davis family. And like I said, not only just the bowling world, but the world lost a real good guy with Dave. So I'm going to wrap this one up. I'll be back next Tuesday, same time, 7 o'clock. Maybe by next Tuesday, we'll have a sponsor. I'm working on a sponsor. We'll get back to that next week. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Find me on YouTube, like and subscribe to the page. Always open to suggestions for conversations, for topics to talk about. Next week, we'll be back to normal. I'll drop the gloves next week. We'll stir the pot again. This week was a little bit different. If anybody has a suggestion for a guest to bring on or wants to come on and chat and BS with me for a little bit, please just reach out to me. I will answer all messages on Facebook and whatnot. The floor is yours, guys. So until next time, I will see you guys next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Be well, everybody. Stay safe.